Hello, my name is Ross. I'm powerless over alcohol. And I've been through these steps with a loving higher power, but I continue to develop a deeper relationship with day by day. Meetings like this, people like you. I'm in the process of making amends, practicing the latter steps daily. And this one too. This is a step that oddly enough gets practiced daily. But before I get into that, I'll just qualify a little bit. So I came from an alcoholic family, and mostly my dad. My mom was maybe a hard drinker. My dad was full-blown. And so I grew up, like many of us did, in a state of fear, wondering what was going to happen next. Restless, irritable, and discontent, all the classic things. But oddly enough, I didn't, even though alcohol was available in the house, my parents let me start drinking when I was like 16. It never turned into a thing. It didn't happen for me until I was around 30. And that was right around when I got my first divorce. So you can start seeing how relationships and sex inventory is kind of tying into the story. So when I got divorced, it was like freedom. There were no kids. It was just clean. It was just boom, over. And man, the drinking it clicked right in, like it was just waiting there, like a complex set of gears, and it was just waiting for that one little thing to drop in, and all of a sudden, ding, off and running, like I'd been drinking alcoholically for 20 years. So the 2 times I came in prior to the last time that I came in, which was 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago. 2 times tried coming in here because I knew that I had a drinking problem. I was making a mess of my relationships. Jobs were okay. I seemed to hold that together. But I managed to tie long periods of sobriety together throughout my basically 20-year period of drinking. And I was on a long period of sobriety, like around 9 months, and I was taking my twin sons down to the Cape, to my parents' house, and I went in to go to Stop and Shop and ended up getting a fifth of Jack and drinking on the way down with my boys in the car. Slid off the road on an exit ramp. On the Cape, they're like hairpins. Slid into a grassy median. Nothing happened, thank God. I mean, ridiculous. But that was my bottom. So I came in. I decided to do 90-90 because I heard about that somewhere. Sounds like a good idea. Be serious. Meanwhile, again, relating back to sex inventory, most of my actions, even at that point, after sliding off the road with my boys in the car, jumping into this program was strictly damage control. It was to make my wife think that something was going to change. So, using this program as a manipulative device, it got me. I'm still here. So I did a 90-90, and the fourth meeting I went to was a Big Book Step Study meeting. I sat next to my sponsor, just for no reason. I just sat down next to this guy. He started talking to me, told me about the steps, and the first few times that I came through the halls, I didn't hear anything about doing this type of work. So it was, there was no solution there. So I never lasted. But I got into this process very early on this last time coming in. And thank God, because it's changed my life. guess that's enough of a drunkalogue. God be with us all. My conduct in sex relations and my intimate relations, there's nothing particularly insane about it. It was mostly normal. I was always in long-term relationships. Had like a 2-year girlfriend in college, a wife, a brief relationship, second wife, a brief relationship. That's it for me. But what I discovered is that you only need one relationship to reveal to you all of the shortcomings. You don't need to have, a whole lot of them. If a whole lot of them are part of your story, then of course that's going to factor in, because what's that? That's going to show you your patterns. That's really what we want to see. That's what we discovered when we were writing our resentments and our fears. It's like, it's kind of redundant after a while. And for some people, many people, is part of their story. For me, I discovered that even with a handful of relationships, I could find out everything that was falling short. And I do like to refer to the writing, because I mean that's what we're talking about. We're talking about writing a sex inventory, and it's wild. So when you see it in the book, it's like it's words. It's like, where did we been selfish, dishonest, and inconsiderate? Who we hurt? Did we unjustify, or et cetera, et cetera? And when you read it in the book, it's hard to take that and translate it into this process. That's why we have Big Book Step Study and Big Book Step Study sponsors to help us do this work, and to do it consistently across the boards. Everyone does it, more or less the same way. But like what I was saying is, there's these questions here in our textbook, but then when you actually get onto a page, that's when things really start to switch up. That's when it switched up for me. So where had I been selfish? And I answered all these questions about where I was selfish, where I was dishonest. Whoa, a whole big list there. And inconsiderate, sometimes we ask ourselves these questions in the midst of things. Something happens and we knew that we were wrong somehow, and we might think it through a little bit, might get to the point of making an apology, but it really doesn't go that deep. And this helped me go a lot deeper, because the selfishness, dishonesty, inconsiderateness it's just like pervasive. I'm a selfish person. So, inconsiderate, and did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy or suspicion or bitterness? And sitting there writing this down, sometimes I didn't have stuff to write down. And then where was I at fault? Who did I hurt? And all of this is opening up to me. So this is fearful stuff. Deeply, this is the stuff that you want to keep in the closet the whole time. You might want to talk about your resentments or your fears with someone, but then talking about relationships, even like, light stuff, it's, at least for me, it can be super, super touchy. But what this process, the way that this was laid out, is I got to write out my resentments, and then I saw, next to those effects, there's fear there. I'm a fearful person. So then I go in and I write fears, and I'm like, so I already learned in my resentments that I was fearful, and so it made me more comfortable to write about my actual fears. And then this, I think, was left for last because it is something that people are very, at least me, but I think that it's true, that it's the most difficult for all of us. And but I went into it with an open mind and an open heart, and before doing this stuff, all the time, I'm down on my knees. I have my candle lit. I'm doing the third step prayer. I'm bringing God in. So God is present during this writing, and that's a huge, huge thing. If we go back in, you hear God alone can judge our sex situation. Let God be the final judge, and it's those aren't just words. Those are instructions, letting us know we need to bring God into this writing and into our lives, into our daily routines. And then questions, the turnarounds, what should I have done instead? All of a sudden, I'm given this whole list of options. So I'm sitting there with God, and I'm letting God's will for me flow through me, and asking this question, what should I have done instead? And that's amazing, because all of a sudden, all of these options of alternate behavior are available to me. I did all this stuff. I can see all this, where I blew it. But, how often do we sit down? Number one, how often do we sit down and say, where was I selfish? Where was I dishonest? We generally don't do that. I don't do it. I didn't do it. I'm lazy, I'm selfish, so I don't sit down. So, number one, we're asking those questions, and then what could we have done instead? And it's really, I'm gonna put the whole God thing into the ground, talking about it so much, but that's where it's at for me. When I'm with God, I'm asking these questions, what could I have done differently? The answer is always different than if I'm just on the fly. What could I do differently right now? I'm in the midst of this thing. What can I do? That's why, in another part of the book, we talk about the pause in step 11. We pause when agitated or doubtful. But prior to this process, I didn't really know how to pause. I'd pause, but then I would let the ego run the show and give me answers to a question like, what could I have done differently? Whereas now, I can bring God into it and say, what could I have done differently? So as the result of that, what I've experienced is that the sex inventory is most certainly to help us address the problems that we have in our intimate relationships. But the fact is, when I got to my ideal, and I'll just I was told to do an ideal for myself. So I use words and actions every day to let me know that I love this person and care about this person. I wanted the person to be a recovered alcoholic that has been through this process, because that's what I did. Share my feelings, both good and bad. Have some kind of physical attraction. And being loving and tolerant, someone whose expectations, I'm kind of flipping back and forth of what I am are based on in reality, not on some pipe dream in their head. But as I'm going through these things, I'm realizing, I'm seeing words like honest, kind, loving, compassionate, and so those are the types of things that I'm thinking I need to bring to this ideal relationship that doesn't exist right now. But that's the thing that I have to bring to every single person that I meet. So for me, doing this sex ideal most certainly was important in helping me to recognize my shortcomings in intimate relationships. But when it came down to the core of what I want to bring to a future relationship, it's exactly the same thing that I want to bring to every other person. And that's being loving, kind, tolerant. I mean, at the worst, tolerant, and at the best, loving. You know, we can do that. I'll throw in a little personal thing, which is probably the last time I'll bring this up, but I had a relapse in, you know, as a big book step study person in my past. And what happened there is I had gotten into a relationship during the tail end of a divorce. And the relationship that I was in actually measured up to many of the ideals that I was looking for. It still crashed and burned. I drifted away from the program and I lost contact with my higher power because I started making the relationship my higher power. And this is, this is just kind of like a cautionary tale, is that you think, you wonder, like, what's going to do it? What can send you back over the edge? And I've heard people say it's not going to be the parent dying. It's not going to be the kid that gets cancer. It's not going to be all these other things. It's not going to be the job. It's going to be the relationship. And I had heard that. And this is where this inventory, I need to stay on top of this inventory, because it's contingent upon the maintenance of my spiritual condition. This is with people that I have to stay on a good footing with. But so at any rate, the relationship that I was in crashed and burned on the day before my final court hearing, and I was not in contact with my higher power. Wasn't talking to my sponsor, and that's what did it for me, a relationship. So I don't want to ever have to experience that again, and so that's why I need to keep this particular inventory right there. So whenever I'm with it can be with any of you, love, tolerance. When I'm now, one of the things, this is absolutely huge, so I'm going to be divorced in like a month, officially. And my soon-to-be ex-wife is in a quasi-relationship. And I was having a weird time with that. And I went back and I looked at my sex inventory, and I straightened my head out, and I've gotten to the point where she and I can be, we hadn't been seeing anything of each other for like almost 2 years. We were living in separate places, very little contact, just enough to take care of our 2 boys. And by running through this again and doing another, what I would call a relationship inventory on that relationship, I'm able to meet with her, hang out, not like, activities and stuff, but hang out, meet for breakfast, have coffee, talk about the boys, go Christmas shopping. And that wouldn't have happened without having this work available to me. It wouldn't have. I would have been resentful or, fearful, same stuff, same list of things that we always have. But I was able to go back into this, look at that situation and say, you know what? God is right here with me. I have no idea what's going to happen. I never know what's going to happen. I have some idea what's going to happen. I'm living right now, right in this moment. And God, let me live this life with love, tolerance, kindness, no matter who I'm with, including my ex-wife. So, if you're doing this work, keep doing it. If you're thinking about it, I guarantee you'll get results. It is work, but it's amazing stuff. It'll bring you closer to God, and it'll give you a happier life. Thank you.
All right.